I never thought I'd find myself in this situation, standing in the wreckage of my marriage, feeling like a complete fool. My name is Jake, and I've been married to Emily for 5 years. We were the picture-perfect couple, or at least that's how it seemed to everyone around us. Friends would say we were goals, and honestly, I believed the hype. We had a nice home, a dog, and a loving relationship, or so I thought. But lately, things had felt off. Emily had changed, and I caught whispers of her dismissive attitude. It started with little things. Her phone notifications were muted, and she was spending more time out with friends, returning home late. I dismissed it at first, attributing it to work stress or maybe a new hobby, but deep down I felt that nagging suspicion creeping in. It was the kind of feeling that clings to your gut and refuses to let go. I remember lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, thinking, something isn't right here. Then came the fateful day that changed everything. I was working from home when I received a text from one of our mutual friends, Greg. He mentioned seeing Emily out at a bar with someone. I shrugged it off at first, thinking it was harmless. Emily had always been social. But when I saw the name of the person she was with, my heart dropped. It was Matt, our wedding photographer. Matt had been around during our happiest moments. He snapped countless pictures of our wedding day, capturing smiles and laughter. I couldn't believe it. So I decided to do a little digging. I started checking her social media. My heart raced as I scrolled through a series of posts where she tagged Matt, gushing about what a great time they had. My head was spinning. How could she be this careless? The next day I confronted her about it. I waited until she came home and asked her outright, "Emily, have you been seeing Matt?" I was calm on the outside, but inside I was a storm of emotions, anger mingled with heartbreak. She looked at me like I'd just thrown a bucket of ice-cold water on her. "What are you talking about?" she asked, feigning innocence, but I could see it in her eyes, the guilt, the panic. I pressed on, recounting the social media posts and what Greg had said. At first, she denied everything, giving me a stream of excuses about how they're just friends and how I was being paranoid. But it wasn't long before the facade crumbled, and she admitted to the affair. "I didn't mean for it to happen, Jake. It just happened." Her words felt like daggers piercing my heart. I began to feel the full weight of betrayal as she explained how Matt had been there for her during a tough time and how they shared a connection. It was sickening to hear her describe their encounters, how she felt alive again, and how I had been so consumed by work that I'd neglected her needs. I felt my blood boiling as she rambled on, making it sound like it was my fault. I could hardly breathe, the betrayal stinging deeper than I thought possible. Her excuses rang hollow, and I couldn't believe the woman I loved had just thrown everything we built together into a dumpster fire. By the time she finished, I was overwhelmed with rage and sadness. I couldn't see a future with her anymore. I had to make a choice, and deep down I knew it would lead to an irreversible path. I was standing at the edge of a cliff, debating whether to jump. In that moment of confrontation, I realized I had been erasing my own happiness for her sake, and now it was time for me to take control. What followed would change everything. I decided to even the score. My thoughts turned to revenge, but it wasn't just about hurting her. It was about reclaiming my life and erasing her from my history. I would ensure that she would be a ghost of my past. But I'll get to that. I need to gather my thoughts. After that heart-wrenching confrontation, I felt like I was living in a fog. The pain of betrayal clouded my mind, but beneath the surface, a new resolve began to take shape. I didn't want to wallow in self-pity. My life had to move on, and I was done being the victim. I needed to plan my next steps carefully, and in doing so, it became clear to me that my best form of revenge wouldn't come from anger but from calculated action. The first thing I did was start taking inventory of my life. What I had, what I wanted, and what I needed to erase. The house we lived in suddenly felt more like a prison than a home. Every corner whispered memories of laughter, intimacy, and shared dreams, but now they were tainted by betrayal. I decided I needed a clean break, a fresh start without the baggage of our past. As the days passed, I found myself obsessively going through everything we had built together. I started with our wedding photos, the very symbols of our love and commitment. I couldn't stand the thought of seeing her smile at me from those frames, especially knowing it was all a lie. So I got to work. I pulled out the box where I kept our wedding album, an album filled with beautiful images of our big day, our first dance, our vows, the joyful tears in her eyes. It felt like a knife had twisted in my gut as I flipped through each page. My heart raced with every picture of her, every moment that I thought meant something. I couldn't let those images haunt me anymore. With a few deep breaths, I took a pair of scissors and started slicing through the pages. It was liberating. Each cut felt like I was severing the ties to our past, to her lies. I knew it might sound extreme, but the thought of her smiling face in those pictures made me nauseous. I didn't want to remember the love I thought we had. I wanted to rewrite my history. Next, I took the digital files. That was a bit trickier, but I was determined. I logged into the cloud where we stored all our photos. It took me a while, but I eventually found the folder labeled Our Wedding. I hesitated for a moment, recalling the joy of that day, but that joy turned sour the instant I thought of Matt. With a click of the mouse, I deleted every single photo. Gone, just like that. It felt like a weight lifted off my shoulders. Once that was done, I turned my attention to social media. I went through our joint accounts and untagged every post where she appeared. I made sure there was no trace of her in my online life. I didn't want her to be able to pop up in my feed like a ghost from my past. The thrill of erasing her made me feel powerful, like I was taking back control over my life. I was aware that people might think I was overreacting, but they didn't understand the depth of the betrayal I felt. I had given Emily everything, my time, my heart, my future, and she had thrown it all away for a fling with a man who should have been a friend. It was time to rewrite my story, to reclaim my identity. As I continued with my plan, I started to think about my life moving forward. What did I want? I wanted happiness, self-respect, and a chance to find love again, love that didn't come with strings or lies attached. I began to imagine a life free from her toxic presence. I thought about my friends and family, the people who truly cared for me and had always believed in me. They would support me when they found out what had happened, but they wouldn't just stand by. They would help me rebuild. I also thought about getting back into dating. It was scary to think of jumping back into the pool after being bruised, but something inside me sparked a desire to connect with new people. I wanted to meet someone who appreciated me, who wouldn't betray my trust for a moment of excitement. With this new mindset, I began to explore the local scene, coffee shops, book clubs, and even a few casual bars. I wanted to immerse myself in this new life, and the thought of moving on filled me with a sense of hope. But before I could dive into dating, I had one more thing to do. I needed to confront Emily one last time, not to win her back, but to give her a piece of my mind. I had to make it clear that I was done, that her actions had consequences. It was time for her to feel the weight of what she had done. As I prepared for the confrontation, I felt a strange sense of calm washing over me. I was no longer the heartbroken husband. I was a man ready to reclaim his life. I planned to make my stand clear. When I saw her again, I would give her no room for excuses or justifications. I would be firm, resolute, and unwavering. She needed to understand the magnitude of her betrayal and the fact that it had created a chasm that could never be bridged. That night, with my thoughts racing and my heart steady, I knew it was time to face her once and for all. This was going to be my moment. I would not just erase her from my photos, I would erase her from my life. The day of the confrontation arrived, and I felt an odd mix of determination and anxiety. I had spent the previous night rehearsing what I wanted to say to Emily, crafting my words so they would cut through her excuses like a knife. I told myself that I needed to be strong, to show her that I wouldn't be the victim in this situation anymore. When she walked through the door after work, I could see the momentary look of surprise on her face as she noticed the somber mood in the house. I was sitting at the kitchen table, waiting for her, my nerves buzzing beneath the surface. The air felt thick with unspoken tension, like a storm was brewing. "Hey, Jake, what's up?" she asked, trying to keep her tone light. But I saw through the facade. She could sense something was off. "Emily, we need to talk," I replied, my voice steady. The way I said it immediately shifted the atmosphere. She sank into the chair across from me, her demeanor changing from casual to cautious in an instant. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for the confrontation. "I know about you and Matt. I saw the pictures and I heard what you've been doing behind my back." A shadow of panic crossed her face. "Jake, I can explain," she started, but I cut her off. "I don't want to hear any more excuses," I said, leaning forward. "You've betrayed my trust for months now, and honestly, I'm sick of hearing how it just happened. This was a choice you made, and it was a choice that hurt me deeply." She opened her mouth to respond, but I held up a hand to silence her. "Let's be real here. You've been lying to me, and it's not just about Matt. It's about everything, our relationship, our future. You've taken something that was beautiful and turned it into a lie." I watched as her frustration bubbled to the surface. "You don't understand. I felt so neglected. You were always working. And I was just trying to find some happiness." The anger in her voice surprised me. It seemed like she was trying to shift the blame back onto me. "Neglected?" I repeated incredulously. "Is that really your excuse? You could have talked to me. You could have said something. Instead, you chose to cheat with someone who should have been a friend. Do you even realize how low that is?" At that moment, it was as if a mask had slipped away and I saw the real Emily, the one who could justify her actions no matter the cost. "I don't owe you anything, Jake. You're acting like you're some saint when you've been distant and unavailable for so long. I didn't ask to fall for someone else. It just happened," she shot back, her voice rising. "Maybe you should have thought about that before you jumped into bed with him," I shot back. I was getting angrier now, the hurt and betrayal flooding back like a tidal wave. "You destroyed everything we built together, and for what? A fling. You think that's how relationships work. You think this is simple." The silence hung in the air as we both took a deep breath, the weight of our words settling painfully between us. I wasn't ready to let her off the hook. "I'm done with this, Emily. I can't look at you without seeing the betrayal, the lies. Every moment we shared has been tainted by what you did." I could see the tears welling up in her eyes, but I didn't feel sympathy. I felt strong. "I've erased you from my life, our photos, our memories. I want to take control of my own narrative now. I want to move forward, and I can't do that while you're still here, pretending everything is okay." Her expression shifted, and for a moment I thought I saw regret. "Jake, please," she started, but I wouldn't let her manipulate me anymore. "No, Emily, this conversation is over. I want a divorce." The words felt foreign but powerful as they rolled off my tongue. I had finally said the thing I needed to say, and with it, I felt a surge of relief wash over me. She looked shocked, like I had slapped her, but I didn't care. "You think I'm going to just walk away from this?" she said, her voice trembling now. "After everything we've been through." I leaned back, crossing my arms. "You've already walked away, Emily. You walked away the moment you made that choice. You don't get to decide when it's convenient for you to feel hurt about this. You made your bed and now you have to lie in it. I'm not going to be the one to fix this." A moment of silence hung between us, thick and suffocating. I could see the realization dawning on her. This was real. I wasn't joking, I wasn't bluffing. I had taken the leap off that cliff and I wasn't looking back. "Jake, I never wanted it to end like this," she whispered, her voice breaking, but I had no sympathy left. "You should have thought about that before you slept with my wedding photographer," I said coldly. "I don't want anything to do with you anymore. I need to heal, and I can't do that while you're still around." With those final words, I walked away, leaving her speechless and shattered. As I retreated to my bedroom, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. It was done. I would no longer be defined by her actions, nor would I let her continue to haunt my life. I was ready to embrace this new chapter, one in which I was in control. No more lies, no more betrayal. Just me, moving forward and reclaiming my life one step at a time, but I still had some unfinished business. I wanted to ensure that Emily understood the consequences of her actions. She would not simply fade away, I would make sure of that. Once the confrontation was over, I felt a mix of relief and anger swirling within me. I had taken a significant step forward by confronting Emily and demanding a divorce, but I couldn't shake the feeling that she'd still gotten away with something. I wanted to ensure she fully understood the repercussions of her infidelity, not just for me, but for her own actions as well. After a sleepless night filled with restless thoughts, I began to strategize my next moves. I knew I needed to act quickly and decisively. I wanted her to feel the weight of her choices, not just in our relationship, but in every aspect of her life. I wasn't going to play the nice guy anymore. I was done being the one who cared the most. First, I contacted a lawyer. I had never envisioned myself getting a divorce, let alone needing legal counsel, but now it felt like the most necessary step to take. I needed to make sure that I was protecting my assets and my future. During our meeting, I laid out the details of our marriage, the infidelity, and my desire to move on. The lawyer was understanding and knowledgeable, pointing out that I had grounds for a straightforward divorce. As we discussed the process, I felt a newfound sense of empowerment. I was taking control of my life, and it was exhilarating. My lawyer recommended that we start gathering documentation and evidence, which would help in negotiations. I agreed, knowing that I had to be diligent if I wanted to come out of this unscathed. With my lawyer's guidance, I started compiling everything: bank statements, property titles, and records of our expenses together. It was exhausting, but it also provided me with a sense of purpose. I wasn't just a victim anymore. I was a man taking charge of his life. Next, I decided to send Emily a message letting her know that I had retained a lawyer and was beginning the divorce proceedings. I wanted to be upfront with her so there wouldn't be any surprises. I didn't expect her to take it well, but I wasn't about to sugarcoat anything. I typed and deleted a few different drafts before settling on a message that was straightforward but firm. Emily, I've retained a lawyer and will be filing for divorce. I expect you to respect this process and refrain from trying to contact me unless absolutely necessary. I hope you reflect on your choices. I hit send, feeling a surge of adrenaline. I knew this message would hit her hard. There was no turning back now. I was resolved to ensure that she understood the implications of her actions. Emily responded almost immediately. The message was a chaotic mix of anger and desperation, pleading for another chance and attempting to justify her actions. Jake, please don't do this. I never meant for it to go this far. You know I love you. I scoffed at the screen, unable to suppress the bitter laugh that escaped me. Love? How could she claim love after everything she had done? I didn't respond. I didn't owe her anything, and I wasn't going to get pulled back into her manipulation. As the days turned into weeks, I focused on my new life. I immersed myself in work, picked up some new hobbies, and spent more time with friends. I found solace in the simpler things, like going for long runs and exploring new restaurants. Each small victory felt like a step away from the pain she had caused. While I was busy reclaiming my life, I started receiving calls from mutual friends. They had heard about the divorce and were concerned about me. I was honest with them about what had happened. I wanted to clear the air so that no one had to take sides or feel awkward around me. Many of them expressed disbelief at Emily's actions. "I can't believe she would do that to you, man," one friend said, shaking his head. "You always seemed so happy together." "Yeah, well, looks can be deceiving," I replied, shrugging off the sympathy. I appreciated the support but was determined to stand on my own 2 feet. I didn't want to wallow in pity. I wanted to be proud of how I was handling everything. Still, part of me felt that lurking need for revenge. I didn't desire to harm her physically or financially. I wanted her to feel the full weight of her decisions. I started thinking about how I could do that without crossing any moral lines. One day, while scrolling through social media, I had an idea. I could create a new narrative for myself, one where I was thriving and moving on. I decided to share my journey, but not in a way that would directly confront Emily. Instead, I would use my posts to show the world my new life, filled with laughter, adventure, and happiness. I took a few photos of myself at the places I had been visiting, the hiking trails, the coffee shops, and the new bar I had ventured into. I shared them with captions about self-discovery, moving forward, and embracing life. I wanted her to see that I was rebuilding, and I wanted our friends to see it too. As I hit post, I felt a rush of excitement. It was my way of saying I'm okay and I'm moving on. And I hoped that she would see it and feel a pang of regret, realizing what she had lost. But more importantly, it was a reminder to myself that I was reclaiming my happiness. I was not just surviving, I was ready to thrive, and there was nothing she could do to take that away from me. With each passing day, I felt stronger, more resilient. I was learning to embrace the freedom that came with letting go of the past. It was bittersweet, but I was ready to write the next chapter of my life, one where I was the hero, not the victim. And with that clarity, I realized that revenge didn't have to be something petty. It could simply be living my best life. As I continued to build my new life, I felt a sense of liberation that I hadn't expected. I was finally free from the shackles of betrayal and deceit. Each day brought new opportunities, new experiences, and new people. It was exhilarating, but it also highlighted just how much I had sacrificed for Emily over the years. With my divorce proceedings underway and my heart starting to heal, I decided to take a spontaneous trip. I needed a break from the routine, a chance to clear my mind and reflect on everything I had been through. I booked a weekend getaway to a nearby beach town, a place I had always loved but never visited often enough. As I drove down the coast, the salty breeze mingled with the warm sun, and I could feel the weight of the past beginning to lift. I arrived at a quaint hotel that overlooked the ocean, and as soon as I stepped into my room, I felt a rush of excitement. This was a fresh start, an opportunity to relax and focus on myself. Later that evening, I wandered down to the beach. The golden sand felt warm beneath my feet, and the sound of crashing waves was a soothing balm for my soul. I settled onto the sand, watching the sun dip below the horizon, painting the sky with brilliant hues of pink and orange. It was a stark contrast to the dark days I had just emerged from. As I sat there, I reflected on my journey so far. I had faced betrayal and heartbreak, but through it all, I had rediscovered my strength. I was no longer defined by Emily's actions. I was reclaiming my identity. I had learned valuable lessons about self-worth, trust, and the importance of surrounding myself with genuine people. The next day, I decided to explore the town. I visited local cafes, shops, and galleries, striking up conversations with friendly strangers. I felt alive and engaged in a way I hadn't in a long time. The more I immersed myself in this new environment, the more I realized just how much I had been missing in my life. That evening, I found myself at a small bar that had live music. The atmosphere was vibrant, filled with laughter and camaraderie. I struck up a conversation with a couple of locals, and before long I was sharing stories over drinks. They were warm and welcoming, and I could feel my spirit lifting even higher. It wasn't long before I caught the attention of a woman sitting nearby. Her name was Sarah, and she had an infectious smile and a kind demeanor. We started talking, and I felt an immediate connection. We shared stories about our lives, our interests, and our dreams. It was refreshing to engage with someone who was genuinely interested in getting to know me. As the night wore on, we found ourselves laughing and enjoying each other's company. I realized how much I had longed for this kind of connection, something light, fun, and free from the baggage of my past. Sarah was easy to talk to, and as we exchanged contact information, I felt a spark of hope that there was still joy to be found in new relationships. Upon returning home, I continued to chat with Sarah. We texted and talked on the phone, gradually building a connection that felt genuine. I was cautious yet excited as I navigated the waters of dating again. It had been a while since I'd allowed myself to feel that flutter of excitement for someone new, but Sarah made it easy. Meanwhile, the divorce proceedings continued. Emily had hired a lawyer, and we exchanged documents and paperwork back and forth. But with every email and every legal form I signed, I felt a resurgence of strength. I knew that I was doing the right thing for myself, and I was determined to see it through. One day, as I was going through my notes for the divorce, I stumbled across a particularly hurtful piece of evidence, a message from Emily that had been forwarded by my lawyer. It was an email where she was attempting to downplay the affair, justifying her actions by claiming I had pushed her away. I felt a wave of anger rise in me, but I quickly quelled it. This was the last time I would let her words impact me. In that moment, I decided to take the high road. I wasn't going to engage in a tit-for-tat fight. I was better than that. I replied to my lawyer, instructing them to proceed with the divorce without unnecessary drama. I wanted to move on without lingering resentments. As the divorce date drew closer, I couldn't help but feel a sense of finality. I had spent months grappling with my emotions, but now I was ready to close that chapter of my life for good. I wouldn't let Emily's choices define my future. When the day finally came for the divorce hearing, I walked into the courtroom with my head held high. I was nervous but determined. I knew I was making the right choice, and I was ready to embrace whatever came next. As I stood before the judge, I felt a rush of empowerment. This was my moment to reclaim my life, my happiness. I was not merely surviving, I was thriving. And with that thought in mind, I began to envision a future filled with new possibilities, one where I could truly be myself. The judge granted the divorce, and as I walked out of the courthouse, I felt as if a weight had been lifted off my shoulders. I was free from the chains of my past, ready to embrace life on my own terms. In the weeks that followed, I focused on myself. I continued my connection with Sarah, exploring the potential of what could be a healthy, genuine relationship. I also leaned into my friendships, spending time with people who valued and supported me. I was finally building the life I had always wanted, a life filled with love, laughter, and authenticity. As I reflected on everything I had endured, I couldn't help but feel grateful for the lessons learned. I had discovered my resilience, my worth, and my ability to love again. And while the journey had been painful, it had ultimately led me to a brighter future, one that was mine to shape. Now, as I looked ahead, I knew that I was on the brink of an exciting new chapter. I was writing my own story, and this time, it would be filled with joy, passion, and endless possibilities. I had finally learned to be the hero of my own life, and I was ready to embrace every moment of it. As the weeks turned into months, my life continued to transform in ways I had never expected. I was no longer the heartbroken man haunted by betrayal. I had emerged from the shadows, stronger and more self-assured than ever before. The divorce was finalized, and with it, a weight that had pressed down on me for so long was lifted. I spent more time with Sarah, and our relationship blossomed in a way that felt both genuine and exciting. She was everything I had been searching for, a partner who appreciated me for who I was, someone who encouraged me to pursue my passions, and offered a listening ear when I needed to vent about the past. With her, I could see the possibility of a future filled with joy and shared dreams. One evening, we were out for dinner at a cozy little restaurant, our favorite spot in town. As the soft music played in the background, we shared stories about our lives, our aspirations, and our families. I found myself laughing more easily than I had in a long time, the heaviness of my past slowly fading away. I looked across the table and saw Sarah's bright smile, and in that moment I knew I had made the right choice in allowing myself to open up to love again. "Jake, I'm really glad we met," she said, her eyes sparkling with sincerity. "You've been through so much, but I admire how you've handled everything. It's inspiring." Her words struck a chord within me. I had worked hard to reclaim my life, and hearing her acknowledgement filled me with a sense of pride. "Thank you, Sarah. It's been a journey, but I finally feel like I'm on the right path." As we finished our meal, I felt an urge to share more about my past, the struggles I had faced, and the lessons I had learned. I wanted her to understand the depth of my experiences, not as a form of baggage, but as a testament to my resilience. "I went through a tough divorce," I told her, "and it taught me a lot about myself and what I truly want in a relationship." Sarah nodded, listening intently as I recounted the events that had led me to where I was today. I could see her processing my words, and I appreciated her willingness to listen without judgment. "I believe everyone has a story," she replied softly. "It's how we grow from those experiences that matters most." Her empathy made me realize how fortunate I was to have found someone like her. As we left the restaurant, I felt a sense of hope for the future. I knew that the road ahead wouldn't always be smooth, but I was ready to face whatever came my way, hand in hand with Sarah. Life took on a new rhythm. I immersed myself in my work, began exercising regularly, and even pursued some hobbies I had neglected during my marriage. I took up photography, using the camera as a means to capture the beauty of the world around me. It felt liberating to express myself creatively, and I found joy in sharing my newfound passion with Sarah. One weekend, I took her to a local art exhibit. As we wandered through the gallery, I felt contentment wash over me. We admired the artwork, shared our thoughts, and even discussed our own artistic aspirations. It was a refreshing change from the toxicity of my past. I was now surrounded by positivity and support. As our relationship deepened, I began to allow myself to dream again. I envisioned a future filled with love, stability, and shared experiences. I wanted to travel, to explore the world together, and to build a life of happiness and adventure. But I also knew that I had to keep my past in perspective. I had learned the importance of communication and trust. I made it a priority to be open with Sarah, sharing my thoughts and feelings, and encouraging her to do the same. We built a foundation of honesty that was essential for our growing relationship. One day, as we strolled through a park, I took a moment to reflect on how far I had come. I had taken control of my life, faced my demons, and emerged stronger. I glanced at Sarah, laughing at a joke I had just made, and I felt a swell of gratitude for the love we shared. "Hey, can I ask you something?" I said, my curiosity getting the better of me. "What made you want to connect with me?" She stopped and looked at me, her expression thoughtful. "Honestly, I saw someone who was genuine, someone who had been through something difficult but was still willing to open their heart. That's rare. I wanted to be a part of your journey, to support you as you discovered the new you." Her answer moved me. I realized that I had not only found someone who appreciated me, but someone who believed in me, a partner who saw my potential and wanted to be part of my story. As we continued our walk, I felt a strong sense of hope for the future. I knew I had made mistakes in the past, but I was also learning from them. I had taken the pain of my earlier experiences and transformed them into lessons that would guide me in this new chapter of my life. As I looked toward the horizon, I felt excited about the possibilities ahead. I was no longer the man who had been betrayed. I was a man who had reclaimed his life, who had learned to love again, and who was ready to embrace all that life had to offer. In that moment, I felt a profound sense of peace. I had faced the darkness and emerged into the light, equipped with the knowledge that I was worthy of happiness. I was ready to write the next chapter, and with Sarah by my side, I knew that this chapter would be filled with joy, laughter, and endless possibilities. I was finally living for myself, and it was exhilarating.